Is Teams the future of Warhammer? Let's talk about that. Welcome to Tattoo Tabletop. My name is James, and today we're just talking about a topic. That's what talking is. Talking is talking about a topic. So the topic in which we are engaging with is whether or not Warhammer is moving towards teams. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is there seems to be a surge of team-based events for Warhammer, both 40k and Age of Sigmar. Recently, I've been exposed to both. In fact, back in March, I played in a Warhammer 40k teams event, of which I have a recap video that'll pop right up there right now. Ding. So we have that there. But also relatively recently, I played an Age of Sigmar teams event. And of course, I'm going to discuss, the differences between the two, explain it a little bit more, but make the argument for and or against teams. So let's get into it. Here at Tattoo Tabletop, we have a lot of fun, so be sure to like, share, subscribe down below. It's completely free and it helps me out. Now back to the video. So starting with number one, we're going to start with the 40k side. So the 40k side has had hit teams events for a while now. And again, like I just said, I've recently been exposed to it playing back in March. Now, my experience was great. I loved teams specifically because it was 2 days and it was 4 games and it was game, lunch, game. Game, lunch, game. Done. Love that. Big heart. When I see the Warhammer official events for Warhammer 40k where you're playing a grand tournament and it's 9 rounds, that would kill me. I can do the best I can, but even after day 1 of 3 games, my voice would already start to be burned out. Day 2 of another 3 games, I'd be definitely dying. And by 3 games on day 3, I'd just be laying on the table, just being like, shh, let me sleep. But the nice format is the amount of games and the way that they're structured, but also because you have a pairing system. For those who don't know, there's an attacker defender. You lay down cards. Yeah, it's this whole process. I can't explain all of it. It's quite extensive. I'm sure you can look up some rules somewhere, but essentially the way that it plays is you have a team of your team, and basically you and your team captain essentially lays down a card. Let's say he's a defender, so he plays down a card face up. That's his defender. They're going to offer up however many attackers. And then from those, they flip those cards that are the attackers, and the defender chooses that, and then vice versa, and it goes back and forth, back and forth. Now, the fun part about that is it's an engaging system. It means that you're going to be playing, hopefully, to your best matchup, and there's strategies and ways to try and make that happen as much as possible. But I think the thing that has the most appeal for teams, and this is both for the 40k and for the Age of Sigmar, is the fact that even when you lose, you contribute to the success of your team. Why is that? Because it's based on a margin specifically. So, in the game Warhammer 40,000, fortunately, you get to 100 points, which means you divide it by 2, and that tells you, or divide it by 5, and that's what tells you how that goes, because you have 20-0, and that's your min-max, or 0-20, etc., etc. And it can fall somewhere in between there. But the nice part is you can lose, but based on how much you lost by, the closer the game is, the equal amount of points. They're within a certain point margin. There's 10 points, which means that it's a draw. That can be a nice contributing factor. Losses feel less bad in the teams format because even if you lose still pretty bad, and let's say you lose to somebody 2-18 or something like that, if your team really just needed a couple more points to secure and cement their lead to just not have you 20-0, that's awesome. You still contributed to the success of your team, and that feels better. As opposed to a GT, you lose your game, you move on to the next bracket, you play the next game, and so on and so forth. So that is a massive pro for it. Same thing with Age of Sigmar. The only thing that really separates the two primarily is I think the 40k system is a bit more involved because of terrain. Terrain is the biggest thing that sets it apart. Is there's multiple terrain layouts. So you'll have opponents who have knights, which means that they want a big open table, or shooty armies. Shooty armies want a big open table. That means they can draw many lanes and many lines of sight, so they can destroy their opponent at range as their army is intended, as opposed to if there's a map that has a lot of terrain, that means that they're going to have to contend with combat armies or other armies that are going to be able to take cover, hide behind stuff, and overall just pose a much bigger nuisance. So that's where the intricacies of 40k, I would say, in some ways supersede Age of Sigmar teams-based side of things. I mean, Age of Sigmar is a very fun game. I've obviously very much enjoyed it. I will continue to enjoy it. But terrain doesn't play as huge of a role as opposed to 40K where you have a teams event and you have 4 different tables that are set up very differently in order for you to have a sort of tactical extra thought to it. You're going to put down your defender and your attacker's going to choose the mission rule, your defender's going to choose the table, that kind of thing. It shifts the game dramatically.
Today's video is sponsored by The Forge for all your hobby nerd needs. Whether it's Warhammer 40K, Age of Sigmar, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Lorcana, and a plethora of board games, The Forge has what you need. The Forge has been my go-to shop and the inventory has only grown. If there's something you don't see on the shelves, fill out a product request form on their website. Thank you to The Forge for sponsoring this video.
Now again, if you're looking at Age of Sigmar teams, you're mostly just looking at, here's the battle plan, here's the matchup or the army you want to fight. And I mean, there could be much more deeper layers to it. This is the way that we played our most recent teams event, which could have been simplified purely on the basis of none of us had played teams before. So it's a much easier thing to do to just have us play the most simple version of it. And that's what we did. And everyone had a blast. I think it was a nice change of pace. Because we have been doing GTs, we've been doing RTDs. Our RTDs have been doing pretty well. Our GTs had gone down in attendance, but that being said, we are also in a time of transition where the last GHB is about to go out the window and the new GHB is about to go in the window. So we'll probably see a spike of increased participation in the tournaments now that we'll have a brand new General's Handbook and people won't be quite as burned out from it. So that is one benefit that we do have coming, is that we have a new General's Handbook coming to help that along. So again, it's not too much detail going either direction, but we ask ourselves this question. This is the main premise, right? Is teams the new format for Warhammer? Yes and no. I think it's still gonna be taste to flavor kind of situation where if you like the team-based format, there are a lot more team-based events that are coming out now where you'll be able to find, you'll be able to have your group of friends, form your team, and you'll be able to participate in a lot of those. A good example is at least one from the Midwest here, Bug Eater, takes place out in Nebraska. Very, very popular event. It actually swapped to teams this year. So it's actually just doing the 40K teams. That being said, Age of Sigmar is still staying the same. It is still saying as just normal GT. They have apparently golden tickets to support the team that does win for Warhammer 40K. But that was huge. The fact that they announced that they're not doing a standard GT, that they are doing a teams event instead. So I think that there's going to be plenty of those events that are going to be propping up, and I think there's an increased popularity because there are a lot of, Warhammer creators that are really liking teams. I know Vanguard Tactics absolutely likes teams. I know that Titans likes teams. There's a lot of people who like teams because it is a fun, engaging format, and in a very real way, it's also fun because you're playing with your friends in terms of, you're always going to meet someone new. You're going to still have a new opponent and stuff like that and people to meet, but it's kind of fun to add that collaborative element to the game, right? Where your team is like, all right, well, I'll play this faction, and then, hey, can I use, the Imperial Agents Codex for this assassin because I need this for my board presence? Oh yeah, go ahead. I'll play Titans so that I can take down the big stuff. And like in my case, I played Leagues of Votann, big shooting, big guns, something that really wanted Titanic matchups because then I can just point my big guns at him and fire. So that format is always going to be fun for that reason. I think that's always going to be popular. Age of Sigmar, I think, is doing a little bit more team stuff. It's not as prevalent, but I could see it increase as we go along. I think that it hosts the same pros. Now, cons. I think the one thing that people might have less fun with potentially on the team side is that there are times where, there is a list that is skewed, a skew list. For those who don't know, a skew list is a list that's built to do one thing very, very specifically. It usually involves repeating a certain data sheet, a war scroll or something like that to do the same thing. Good example is one of the matchups I had at the Warhammer 40K teams event was a bunch of chaos armigers, like an absurd amount of chaos armigers, and it was designed that way on purpose. Now, at least for me personally, I have a preference towards more balanced armies. I find that a little bit more thematic, a little bit more fun when you see that kind of mixed army building kind of style where it's like I have tanks and then I have my troops and then I have this. It's just my RTS brain. That's one con to it as well. But that's kind of the one con, if I'm being honest. I think the format lends itself to a lot of really cool opportunities Obviously, there can be high pressure competition, but that's going to be the case for any sort of grand tournament. It just depends on your community. That's going to be about it. I will say that the Warhammer 40k one, I think, has a bit more rules and a bit more depth to it because of the terrain layout, as opposed to Age of Sigmar. And again, this could be different, but the way that we played it is everybody had the same battle plan. It was literally just, who did you want to fight, essentially. And I think it could be fun in the event that the Age of Sigmar starts experimenting more with teams where terrain is laid out differently. In that way, maybe going to build an army that's like, okay, well, I like to cast, so I want to get near places of power. This map has place of power here, which means that I'll be able to get my boosts and stuff like that. But again, at least right now, the most interactive piece of Age of Sigmar terrain is Wildwoods, and it's because it can give you cover, it can make you invisible. And that's kind of important if you're a slow-moving melee army and you're fighting a shooting army, you want to be able to have that cover. So I could see that shifting that way as well. So that's the video today. I just kind of wanted to talk about whether or not that's true. And of course, engage with me. Let me know, down in the comments down below. Let me know, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. But also, just let me know your thoughts. Have you played teams? Is it a format that you're interested in? Is it something that you want to participate in? Or is it something that you're not so interested in, you're more okay with just the traditional GT style? I would love to hear your thoughts on it because it is growing in popularity. I think we can all agree that it is increasing in its presence. We're seeing a lot more teams events, especially for the Warhammer 40k side. I think we could see it for Age of Sigmar. And I think it's a great question to ask ourselves is, are we moving in that direction? And is that for the better? Is that not for the worse? Is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which way it goes. Well, that'll just about do it for me. I've been Tattooed Tabletop. Go paint something.